Doon University. She's from Doon University, Dehradun. So for the first time, we have a chance to have her. So very warm welcome, Dr. Malashika.
Thank you
Uh,
very
she's a very distinguished speaker in this particular area. You can see the area is representation of India in Latin American literature. So before she takes over, I will just give a little glimpse of her works and her interest. Uh, she is a recipient of European Commission's prestigious scholarship Erasmus and pursued the course uh, of Masters Crossways in European Humanities from New University of Lisbon, Portugal, University of Bergamo, Italy, and University of Sheffield, UK, 2006-2008. Now, her research areas are medieval Iberian literature, Golden Age Spanish literature, literary translation and reception of India in Latin American literature, and also she completed a major research project sponsored by ICSSR in 2016. Some of her published articles are on the theme of reception of India in Latin American literature, India through Paz lens, a special focus on Vislumbres de la India, Octavio Paz ka Bharat, and Severo Sadi's Benares, a metaphor for Cuban self. Besides, she has other accomplishments as well, but we will not go into details and rather hand over, the charge of the session to our distinguished speaker. Thank you, Malashika
Thank you very
ji.
much.
And I also like to thank Dr. Mishra, who will be coordinating also this event. Uh, Over to you, Dr. Malashika.
Thank you very much, ma'am. A very good afternoon to everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Deepa Chakrabarti, Head of Amity School of Languages, and Dr. Sabyasachi Mishra, Faculty of at the Amity School of Languages, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to speak in this webinar today for their students and faculty on the topic that Professor Deepa Chakrabarti mentioned in my bio, representation of India in Latin American literature. I also would like to extend my thanks to the IT support team of the Amity School of Languages for making it possible. I'm told that this is the audience, this is a heterogeneous group that is attending the webinar today. There are students and faculty of not just Spanish here, but also of French, English, and other language departments. Students of Spanish from Doon University, I assume, have also joined the session. Therefore, to make it comprehensive for everyone to follow, I have divided the talk in 3 parts. So as you can see in the slide, the title of this talk, Representation of India in Latin American Literature. We are going to first talk about what is this representation? What does it mean to represent India or to represent the other in general? And to represent the East, to represent the Orient for the uninitiated, those who have just begun their studies in Spanish literature or in any other foreign language or foreign literature. I would like to talk a little about the area of studies that this kind of area, this kind of research comes under. It is, there have been departments of Indology, which is the field of studies on India. So this has been always there. This has been there since 17th century, 18th century. British called this area of studies as Indology. William Jones, a British Indologist, he named it Indology. When we talk about Indology, usually one associates Indology with German scholarship on India, because that was the most extensive kind of research was done by German Indologists. But Indology would refer to the study of Vedic texts, the study of Sanskrit texts, the ancient India. In contemporary times, in modern times, the Indology departments in European countries have reduced. The number of departments on Indology, on this studies, has reduced. So Europe, as I was just, for the uninitiated, I just mentioned what is Indology of India, but it existed since 16th, 17th century, 18th century. But now in contemporary times, the departments, number of departments have reduced, I just mentioned. This is Indology. Now, there is another term that you will come across in my presentation is Orientalism. So Orientalism is the study of, it was actually a book published in 1978 by a British, an English professor in Saudi Arabia called, in Egypt actually, called Edward Said. He said Orientalism is a critical study of the Orient. So Orient is also the East. West called the East as Orient. So Western scholarship on Orient or on the East, Eastern countries, is known as Orientalism, which you will come across in my presentation. So India was also put under Orient. However, in this book, Orientalism, which was published by Edward Said in 1978, he does not talk of Orientalism much in terms of India. He just mentions India a little bit. It is mostly that in Gulf countries, Middle East, which we referred to, although it is not in the east of India, but we still call it Middle East because of the Eurocentric approach of these studies as Orientalism. So now, if I have divided this presentation in 3 parts, as I was just mentioning. So the first part, I have named it Beginnings. Second, Modernism or Modernismo as a turn of the century movement. And third is Image of India in 20th, 21st century. So before we begin to study the Latin American representation of India, we must recollect that since the publication of Orientalism, about which I just mentioned, if you have any doubts, if anyone has any doubt, you may like to ask about or post your queries later on Orientalism or in the chat box now. So since the publication of Orientalism in 1978 by Edward Said, the Orient, or India in our case, in this case, has been seen as a site of imagination for the West or the Occident. So as the East was referred Orient, the West called itself the Occident. So Occident versus Orient. In our case, we would focus more on India. So India, since it was also part of Orient, it was considered as a part of Orient, it would come under Orient. So by West here, when we say West or the Orient, by West here, we refer to Europe. That has seen India as its binary opposite. So as I just said, Occident versus Orient, West versus East. So West is Europe. West always saw the Orient, or Occident always saw the Orient as its binary opposite. So the Orient is a mass. It's not individual. Orient is not made up of individuals. Orient is collective. Orient is mass. West saw India also as its binary opposite. Of course, if you would compare the image of India with the image of Gulf countries, it is very different in European imagination, but we would only focus on Indian representation. So it is a representation that shows an authority over the one represented. So the West or Europe, for example, there has been huge, it is a huge area of studies on India. Anglo-French representation of India is a huge area of studies. So if you see the French, how the French would represent India or how the British would represent India, it as if they had the authority to represent India. They had the authority to portray this image of India or of the East, in our case, India, that they felt would establish their identity. So Latin America, however, that was colonized by Europe, Spain actually in this case, by European countries, namely Latin America comprises of Mexico, one country, some countries in North America, some in South America. It also includes Brazil. Brazil was colonized by Portugal, and rest like Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Mexico were colonized by Spain. So Latin America, which was colonized by European countries, namely Spain and Portugal, often appears to be an extension of the West. So when we say West, Paschatya Sabhyata, Western civilization, we usually refer to Europe. But since Latin America is in the West, Europe is in our West. If you see the direction, the cartography, the map. Europe is in the west of India. Latin America, even west to Europe. So it is considered usually as an extension of the West. However, it is never considered as the center of the West. It is usually considered to be on the periphery of the so-called Occident. So if I say Occident, you may like to also replace it with West. All right. So Latin American countries that gained independence from the European colonizers in 19th century, I mean, it was a long process after a long struggle. Cuba was the last colony to gain independence in 1898. So it's not that all the countries gained independence in 1 year, but it was a long period of struggle. And India, as we know from Britain in 20th century, in 1947, share a similar kind of past of being colonized. Although the colonizers differed in both the cases. In case of Latin America, or if we exclude Brazil, then we can also call it as Hispanic America. Hispanic is the adjective given to something, anything referring to Spain or Spanish, not Spain only, but Spanish. So Spanish America, you can call it Spanish America. You can also call it Hispanic America. In my presentation, I've also used the term Hispanic America. So that is why I want to make it clear that if you say Latin America, you would include Brazil, because Portuguese is spoken there, and Portuguese is also one of the Latin languages. However, when you say Hispanic America, you would exclude Brazil. You would refer to all the countries where they speak Spanish. So colonizers differed in both the cases. In case of Hispanic America, it was Spain, and in case of India, it was Britain. In current times, there has been an immense interest in this South-South cooperation. So Mexico, of course, is in North America, but many Spanish-speaking countries lie in the South America. So the South-South, South Asia, South America, the South-South cooperation, in order to look beyond the Eurocentric approaches to epistemology. So what is Eurocentric? As I said, that Middle East is not in the East to India, but we still call it Middle East, because this is the term that Europe coined for the countries that lied very close to Europe, but they were still in the East. So these are Eurocentric approaches to epistemology. Indology is also another Eurocentric approach to the studies of India. So to look beyond, to topple this kind of approach to understand India, to understand, to come up with a scholarship on India, this kind of interest has begun. So it makes us, that makes us delve deep into the representation of India by Latin American intellectuals. At this juncture, we have to look into the history of ideas, or the intellectual history of Latin America that shaped up Latin American identity in 19th and 20th century. So as I said that in 19th century, the Latin American countries gained independence, and India gained independence in 20th century. These are new nations. These are some nations that gained independence after a long period of struggle against, they fought with their colonizers. So, so this is the period when Latin America is looking for models to understand what kind of nation do they want to become in future. So this is also very important to understand. If Dr. Mishra can put the second slide, not the title slide, but again one where I have mentioned the research questions. There are two research questions that I'm going to deal with through this presentation. First is that why did Latin Americans think to represent India? Why did they write texts, literary text, including India as the backdrop sometimes, or sometimes include India as a character of the text? Why did they weave such a story that they included India in their narrative? So we have to also understand the intellectual history of Latin America. This is what when I mentioned history of ideas, this is what I refer to when I say history of ideas. So we have to understand this history of ideas that shaped up Latin American identity after they became independent nations in 19th century. So to understand this, we have to recollect. We have to go to the history of Spain. We recollect that Spain that colonized from late 15th century up to 19th century, the majority of what we know as Latin America today was dominated by the Moors, Muslims from North Africa, for over 8 centuries, from 711 to 1492. Julia Ecuchigian Hispanist, she suggests in her celebrated work called Orientalism in Hispanic Literary Tradition, where she has dealt with works of Borges, George Luis Borges or Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, Octavio Paz, and Severo Sarduy. She published the book in 1991, said that Hispanic imagination, if I say Hispanic, it means it refers to Spain and all the Latin American countries where they speak Spanish. So she says in this book, in this celebrated work of hers, Hispanic imagination of Orient is laden with a spirit of respect for the Orient, unparalleled by other Western European nations. So Europe also represented India. As in the beginning of the presentation today, I said that I mentioned that how Europe representing India since 17th century, 18th century, but it was more in ancient India. That's why they established the departments of Philology. But here she says that since Spain had this close contact with Moors, Muslims from North Africa, that was also considered as the East by Europeans for almost 8 centuries. It's a representation, Spain's representation of the East, of India or of the East, is very different from other Western European nations. Kouchighian suggests that Latin America, that was a colony of Spain in past, is also open to a dialogue and exchange with the East. So I began with saying how was European representation, mainly, actually, I didn't mention much, but actually I referred, when I said European representation in the beginning, I referred to Anglo-French representation and a little bit German representation also. But in case of Spain, it was very much open to the East. It was not the first colonizer. It colonized the New World, of course, Latin countries, but before that, the Moors, the people from Orient, so-called Orient, came to Spain and lived there for 8 centuries. So that's how, by extension, Latin America is also open to dialogue and exchange with the East. She says, Kouchighian goes on saying that one owes this openness of Hispanic Orientalism to the convivencia. It is actually concept convivencia, that we say it as convivencia in English also, but it can be loosely translated as coexistence during Spain's Middle Ages. So what is convivencia? When Muslims, Jews, and Christians, these 3 cultures, lived with tolerance. 3 cultures, 3 religions, 3 languages lived with tolerance. That is reflected in various artistic manifestations of those times. Of course, it's debatable that whether they lived in tolerance, but mostly, if you see it from cultural point of view, they lived in tolerance. So this tolerance is called convivencia. So Spain already had this exposure to the East. They lived in tolerance with Muslims, Jews, and Christians. All 3 cultures lived together in tolerance. So for Kouchighian, the Hispanic representation of the East opens the space to an infinite blending of opposites rather than entrapping it into the closed space of binary opposites. So like in case of Europe, as I said in the beginning, that how Europe would look or represent India or East, China also, but mostly in our case, we are much more interested in the representation of India. So Europe, mainly Anglo-French representation of India or German representation of India, was mostly of binary opposite. They would see India as binary opposite. Wherever in Latin American imagination, in Hispanic Orientalism, they would blend with India or with the East. So if we look at the famous encounter, it's called, in Spanish, it is called encuentro, or encounter between the old and the new world. Old world, when Spain arrived when Christopher Columbus with his fleet arrived in New World, this famous encounter that happened, one says that it happened on 12th of October, 1492, between the old and the new world, when Christopher Columbus arrived in what we know as Latin America today, in late 15th century. He thought that he had reached India. He was coming to India. The Catholic kings in Spain in 1492 had commissioned him to look for an alternate route to India, the spice route, उसके अलावा दूसरा रूट, बिकॉज जो स्पाइस रूट था दे वुड एनकाउंटर अ लॉट ऑफ पायरेट्स, तो दूसरा उसने कहा मैं दूसरा रूट लेके जाऊंगा. सो बाय एक्सीडेंट ही reached to the new world, but he thought that he had reached India. Some believe that he never found out until his death that the truth, that it was not India. So this is known as the fabulous error of Columbus. Fabulous error of Columbus. This fabulous error of Columbus, that he thought that he had reached India, it opens the possibility of discourse on connected histories between Latin America and India. He thought by mistake, he thought he had reached to India. This is considered as the fabulous error of Columbus. And it is believed that this is where begins this connected history, even though they don't connect, these histories are different in time, in space, but similar kind of trajectory. This is what we call connected history between Latin America and India. This is an idea that has been propounded by an Indian historian, whose name is an Indian historian, very famous Indian historian called Sanjay Subramanian, 1997. So if one wants to read more on this topic, one would read an essay by Catalina Quesades, a professor of Hispanic Studies at the University of Bern. She has done extensive research on this topic. Since then, India has appeared in literary works sporadically, in Latin American literary works sporadically, occasionally, such as this famous work of non-fiction of Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, Facundo, Civilization and Barbarism. Very, very famous work, published in 1845. He mentioned of India. All right. So what I was trying to say is that if we see in Latin American Indian representation of Indian Latin American thought, then we trace it back to this text, very famous text by Domingo Faustino Sarmiento called Facundo, Civilization and Barbarism, that he published in 1845. However, it was only in late 19th century that modernism, or modernismo as we call it in Spanish, appeared as the turn of the century movement in Latin America that looked beyond the mundane depiction of realism. So right before, in late 19th century, mid 19th century in Latin America, there was this literary and cultural tendency of realism, which believed in mundane depiction of the reality. Reality, the art, literature should depict the reality of the society. It was only when, with the advent of modernism in late 19th century, as turn of the century movement, which was based on the French ideas of symbolism, Parnassianism. Parnassianism is art for art's sake. Art should not only depict reality, it is also there for aesthetic value, for aesthetic sense. So with the advent of modernism, that they reached up to India, they were actually fed up with the prosaic worldview, the mundane depiction of reality done in realist works. So that it was modernist authors, modernist intellectuals who reached up to India in search of utopia. So they were looking for an escape at that time. As I said in the beginning of the presentation also, a while ago, that we have to also understand the history of ideas, intellectual history of Latin America, that why did it want to represent India? Why did they write about India? So it was for the first time, of course, mentioned in 1845 in Facundo, Civilization and Barbarism by Domingo Faustino Sarmiento, who later became president of Argentina. But it was only in 19th century, late 19th century, with the advent of modernism, that they represented, this conscious representation of India happened. Rubén Darío, a poet from Nicaragua, also known as the father of modernism in Latin America, who made mention of India in his collection called Medallones. He mentioned only of fakirs, maharajas, and also Ramayana, but the influences, but he never traveled. Rubén Darío never traveled to India. So he never traveled, but his influences were European. The texts that he read on India were European texts. So Rubén Darío, of course, includes mentions about India, but never travels. So he never traveled to India, but it was the first, Rubén Darío, when he mentioned of fakirs, maharajas and Ramayana, this was first conscious attempt, but he never traveled. But this was the first conscious attempt to engage with India. And so this collection of Rubén Darío, Medallones, it still acts as the leading lights to the travelers to the travel accounts on India, to the travelers, intellectuals, diplomats who traveled to India in 20th century. So this is very important for us. That's why it becomes very important, modernism as the turn of the century movement. So Latin American intellectuals traveled a lot. Many Latin American intellectuals traveled to India in various capacities, professional and personal capacities. So the imagery of India was indeed exotic, by Ruben Dario, is influenced by Romanticism. The imagery that Ruben Dario included, he represented India, the way he represented India was exotic, like very similar to the European representation of India, as it was based on Romanticism. But it also stood as an escape from the prosaic worldview of the West, especially of Northern Latin America. It was seen as opposed to the Western values that could bring some solace to the modernist writers at that point of time in Latin America. It also has been claimed by James Clifford in his book called Writing Cultures, The Poetics and Politics of Ethnography, that while representing the other, while constructing the other, one also constructs the self. So in the beginning, when Latin American intellectuals, especially Ruben Dario, didn't travel to India, but wrote about India, mentioned about India, it was actually based on this idea of constructing the other to construct the self. So owing to this need in Latin America, I also had mentioned that they were looking for models for nation building. So owing to this in Latin America, that was felt by the intellectuals. They engaged with India. For example, Jose Enrique Rodo, who is considered as one of the most important writers during the turn of the century, modern movement of modernism in Latin America. He wrote a very renowned essay called Ariel in early 20th century, actually precisely 1900, that he published it in Uruguay. That included a very eclectic mix of East and West in the narrative in order to quench the thirst of Latin American spirit that constantly looked for an answer that was posed by the self about itself. So the self to self about itself. They were asking themselves this question, that who are we? So they engaged very consciously. So first Ruben Dario, then Rodo in his essay called Ariel. On this, Gushigyan suggests that, she says, it was an effort to retreat momentarily from the rhetoric of persuasion through a blending with the intriguingly exotic, thereby rejecting a closed image of the self. So when they, as I said, that when Europeans engaged with India, they were entrapping the India or the East into, when they looked it as binary opposite, they said, what we are, they are not. What they are, we are not. So this was a model that, jo khacha kehte hain, so they were trying to put India into certain kind of model, sacha ya khacha jaisa gaya, into a mold. Whereas here, they wanted to know about themselves. Latin Americans, they wanted to know about themselves in the beginning. So they opened, this was the beginning, initiation of a dialogue with India. But this is very beginning. So of course, the model, the influences were European. Some of the writers from 20th century Latin America, they went beyond the modernist approaches of engaging themselves only with the exotic imagery of India, and they opened themselves to be blended with this imagery. Argentinian Victoria Ocampo, for example, came in close contact with the Nobel laureate from India, Rabindranath Tagore. She composed, Tagore stayed due to certain personal and health reasons. He had traveled to Argentina and he stayed. He fell sick. He had to travel to Spain, but he fell sick suddenly. So he stayed at the house of Victoria Ocampo, an intellectual from Argentina, and in Buenos Aires. She composed, so that's how she came in close contact with Tagore. She composed a few works based on this experience. The Tagore-Ocampo relationship helped bringing the 20th century India closer to Argentina. So she did a very, very intense research work. She published, she would edit a magazine called Sur, South, where she would not only publish literary works, but also talk about the political scenario of India at that time. It was during the times of Mahatma Gandhi, Tagore, and she also, that also led to some political visits much later. So her interaction with India was also at this political level due to her close contact with Tagore. Now, if we talk about Pablo Neruda, so this was a little bit about Victoria Ocampo, an Argentinian intellectual. Now we talk about Pablo Neruda. I'm sure most of you know about Pablo Neruda, the Chilean poet and Nobel laureate as well, even Nobel Prize in Literature in 1971. His engagement with India can also be seen as seeping in blending of two cultures. However, his engagement is a demystifying one, especially a breakthrough from the exotic imagery of India represented by the modernist intellectuals. So India was seen as the exotic by the modernist intellectuals. Pablo Neruda broke free from that imagery because he stayed in Rangoon and Ceylon as a consul, and his stay was marked with solitude and boredom. He also had traveled to India on some occasion, to Kolkata. He had confessed in it himself in an interview in 1970 that India did not have an intellectual influence on his poetry. Although he had, as I said, that he had visited Kolkata on some occasion, and also the most famous collection, one of the most famous collections of his, 20 Poems of Love and a Song of Despair, the 16th poem of 20 Poems of Love and Song of Despair is seen to be clearly seen as it's seen as an attempt in paraphrasing Tagore's 30th poem from the Gardener, from the collection Gardener, which Tagore published in 1913. So he outrightly rejected any intellectual influence, but we can see it that he was influenced of Tagore. Latin American ambassadors, other Latin American ambassadors, such as Chilean. So as I said, that Latin American intellectuals, they travel to India in various different capacities, some for professional reasons, some for personal reasons. But a lot of Latin American diplomats, a lot of Latin American intellectuals, literateurs, Latin American literati was sent to India on diplomatic assignments. So for example, the Chilean Augusto Dalmar, Miguel Serrano, Mexican Octavio Paz, who later won Nobel Prize also for literature. And there was another ambassador in India in recent times, Colombian ambassador. He's also a Colombian short story writer. His name is Juan Alfredo Pinto Saavedra. And so he also published a work called Stories of the Lotus, in Spanish, Flor de Loto. Occasional travelers also wrote about India. For example, the Cuban writer Severo Sarduy, the New York-based Dominican dancer and educator Josefina Baez, and the poet Rogelio Sinan, the Panamanian consul to British India in 1938. Also Argentinian author Julio Cortázar, Borges also, Jorge Luis Borges also wrote. Borges never traveled to India, but he was influenced of Buddhist philosophy. He included imagery of India in some of his works. But his compatriot, Julio Cortázar, visited India on several occasions and twice. First in personal capacity, and later to meet his diplomat friend from Mexico, Octavio Paz, here in India. So works of these intellectuals that comprise essays, fiction. So there is not one genre that they would only write novels on India, or they would write only poems on India, but they wrote fiction, they wrote essays, they wrote poems, are works of intercultural mediation between Latin America and India. In their attempts to cope with difference and dispute through languages, because not all of them knew all the Indian languages, diplomats have often been compared as linguists. They have often been compared to linguists, because diplomats have this authority. They are connoisseurs of language and culture, especially after their sojourn in India, they have become one. So they have been often compared with linguists and poets, actors and orators also. One of the fundamental research questions here is, which I also have put in the slide, but I will mention here, that what is the perception of Latin American intellectuals about India, and by which mechanism is India perceived by them? Is it the same model, is the same prism, the same lens that Europe had established, or is it a slightly altered prism? It's totally a new kind of prism that they created to look at India. So this concept of Orientalism addresses these questions. However, each gaze is unique in its own right. That is why we argue here that it stems from its very own cultural elements. So that's why it's important to know Latin American history also. When one wants to understand their representation of India, it's imperative to know that what went on that they started to engage, because it stems, the roots are in their own cultural elements, this intellectual history in Latin America. So for example, Mexican Octavio Paz is a leading example. Probably his oeuvre on India is the most expansive one. He visited India, he visualized India, he visited India on two occasions, first on a small diplomatic assignment, later as ambassador to India. He visualized India through various works of his, such as Alternating Current, East Slow, Monkey Grammarian, Conjunctions and Disjunctions, and In Light of India, which is called Vislumbres de la India in Spanish. Octavio Paz believes that India is a heterogeneous country where Hindu temples, Islamic mosques, Buddhist sanctuaries coexist simultaneously. He says in his book In Light of India that he was surprised with I quote, the diversity, just a second, I quote, with the diversity created by extreme contrast. He acknowledges that India's singularity affected him just because Mexicans were like it too. Paz in this book that he calls a long, this Vislumbres de la India, he called it as a long footnote on rest of his works. One of his works, which is a collection of poems on India called East Slope and Alternating Currents, Monkey Grammarian, all these works, first he published all these works and later after he left India for Mexico, he published this work in Vislumbres de la India, In Light of India, 1995, much later. And he calls it a long footnote on other works of his on India. He gives an overview of India from past up to modern times by discussing the multicultural and complex imagery of India in different stages. He talks on India as nation. Paz argues that India is too complex to be a nation for him. This was also, this was discussed. This was critiqued by various Indian Hispanists also, is very similar to Tagore on his thinking on Indian nationalism. He also argues about the concept of time in Western and Indian cultures. Like, for example, he says that the cyclical concept of time, the reincarnation, birth, death, birth. So there's a cyclical concept of time in Indian culture, distinguishes itself from the Western one, as the latter understands time in a linear way. So start and stop in Western concept. In Eastern concept, in Indian concept, there is no stop. It's continuous process, cyclical. So he says that is the reason they fall into the trap of history. West falls into the trap of history because it believes in start and stop. Paz also keeps drawing inferences with Mexican whenever he can in a fashion that seems to be self-reflective exercise to understanding Mexican culture through India. He kept saying this. He says that when I look at India, when I understand India, actually it is an effort to understand Mexico. Paz assimilates himself with the Indian aesthetics in this attempt. Kwame Anthony Appiah, in his book, very famous book, Cosmopolitanism, also called, this one, Cosmopolitanism in Ethics in a World of Strangers. He says cosmopolitans are committed to pluralism. They believe that there are many values that are worth living by. So there are many. It's not only that you have to live like a Mexican. You have to live like an Indian. This is what Paz believed in. This began with the turn of the century movement of modernism, that they wanted to become cosmopolitan, to break free from the mundane depiction of reality that had become a fashion in realism in late 19th century. This is what Paz takes as point of departure. He also suggests, Kwame Anthony Appiah also suggests that there is no singular truth. In search of the truth, one has to look at a lot of mirrors. This is what Paz does. This way, one can find many images in those many mirrors. So if you look at yourself only in one mirror, you can only look at your frontal view. But if you have many mirrors, like it happens usually in dressing rooms, that you have many, many mirrors, you can look at yourself from various angles. This is what Paz did. Pa's attempt, and also because he was a diplomat, he also interacted with poets, intellectuals. So Pa's attempt to looking at India has been one of a kind. By talking about India, he holds a mirror to the Mexican self. Michael Schmidt calls Pa's a pluralists. We observe that Mexican culture or Latin American culture is a melting pot of many cultures. We know that because Spain went to Latin America, what we know as Latin America now. It brought along with it the Baroque tendencies, because Spain arrived in Latin America, in Hispanic America, I mean, what we know as Hispanic America now, in 1492. So by end of 16th century, it was Baroque. They brought Baroque tendencies to Latin America. The syncretism, they brought syncretism, eclectic mixing of blending of cultures. So Latin America has been a melting pot of many cultures, sometimes in conflict and sometimes not. However, culture is not something static, nor a homogeneous entity. It is both by name and by name, it is heterogeneous. As much as Pa's would understand the English and French cultures, was heavily influenced by them. He also tried to understand the erotic art of India. He wrote about, he was very much influenced of French surrealism. André Breton was his guru. He would consider him as his guru. But he would also understand, he also attempted to understand the erotic art of India. Schmidt says that in each of these readings by him, he tries to understand his own culture. Pa's presents facts and pictures of Indian society to the foreground, analyzes them innately, tracing their origin. And there is no doubt that these pictures have certain elements of autobiography. Like in Light of India, there is this element of autobiography. He confesses it. There is a work of his called Labyrinth of Solitude. He says, Laberinto de Soledad. He says, this book was my attempt to answer to the question, the perennial question that what is a Mexican? Through this book, in Light of India, I'm answering to what is Indian, what is India. So there is this autobiographical note also. We would also find in some works, in some other works also in Latin American literature, that where India has been represented. In each of them, and in each of the works of Octavio Paz, he finds ways of understanding his own country and culture. In pursuance of his quest, he invites criticism from different sections in India. As I said, that when he says, for example, that Hinduism was incompatible with nationalism, he said Hinduism is free-flowing, nationalism is straitjacket. He invited criticism. There have been Indian Hispanics who have criticized him for it. Because the way he thought that Hinduism was free-flowing and it was not compatible with nationalism. He thought that Hinduism was more inclusive. However, Paz also himself, he had said it himself, that I quote, criticism is the apprenticeship of the revisiting imagination. Imagination cured of fantasy, resolved to confront the world's reality. Criticism tells us that we ought to learn to dissolve the idols, learn to dissolve them in ourselves. We have to learn to be, dream and be free. So, of course, he welcomed criticism for it. If he had known that he was criticized for it, he would welcome it. In his entire work, Octavio Paz tries to draw some similarity and distinctions as well between Indian culture, for example, gastronomy, etc., from that of Mexican. He also talks about gastronomy. He just does not only touch upon the deep philosophical texts, but he also brings forth some similarities. He brings forth differences, distinctions as well, with an objective understanding of his own culture. His attempt was to understand his own culture better. He says that he's able to appreciate his own culture better because of his stay in India. He said it, he confessed it. He draws a comparison with Aztec civilization, with that of India's civilization, the ancient civilizations. And he says that how Indian society is a melting pot and a fusion of all races, languages, and cultures in a single one, under the domain of the same law. Here comes the role of cosmopolitanism. So he says that even if you are Hindu, it does not mean that you have to follow, or even if you practice other religion. If you are from one nation, you have to practice only one sort of law. Cosmopolitanism comes from the Greek word of cosmos. It means that one is citizen of the universe, cosmos, citizen, universe. So he believes, here comes into force the philosophy of cosmopolitanism, which sees entire world as one global village. We talk about global village now, but Paz saw, one could conclude from Paz's works that he saw it like one. The Argentine, now I will focus on Argentine Julio Cortázar's work on India. So this much on Octavio Paz, then Julio Cortázar's works on India. Usually these are not, Octavio Paz has been read so much, studied so much by Indian intellectuals, not just Hispanics, but also different departments of English studies have also dealt with the works of Octavio Paz. Julio Cortázar, whereas has not been worked so much by, he has received less attention by Indian Hispanics, as his stay in India was very short. And the corpus of his study is also very small on the subject, on the representation of India. He visited India twice, once in 1956 and second time in 1968. Nevertheless, as we have mentioned that two of his works, we mentioned that some of his works were where he included India as a character, he wrote as a backdrop also. One is a text written based on his experience at the Havra station in the city of Joy, Kolkata. This text is from the Ultimo round, the last round you can translate, in 1969 he published, sorry, and prose of the observatory. From the observatory, it is actually translated into English. It is translated into English as from the observatory, prosa del observatorio in 1971. It is based on his experience when he visited Jaipur, the observatory, Jantar Mantar of Jaipur. Much after his first visit to India in 1956, he published the seminal work La Rayuela, Hopscotch, which is his very important work, La Rayuela in 1963, in which he also included his impressions of the Orient and Buddhism. So of course, in Rayuela, he never talks about India, but he talks of Buddhism and also of East, of Orient. But the other two works, one text and the other, actually a pictorial book. It has a lot of photos, Prosa del Observatorio. However, for him, unlike Paz, these do not act as a metaphor to discover the self. Paz read about India, wrote about India to understand his Mexican self and by extension, Latin American self. But Julio Cortázar never saw India as a metaphor to discover his self. Although the very first impressions of Cortázar and Paz are very similar, wherein both find themselves lost in the lanes and by-lanes of the city of Bombay. Paz mentions it in Light of India, Vislumbres de la India, that he published in 1999, and Cortázar in a letter written to a friend of his in 1956. The text was Recommended Tourism. He writes on his impressions at the Havra station in Kolkata. Paz on Bombay, lanes and by-lanes of Bombay, and Cortázar in the city, based on his experience in the city of joy, Kolkata. It was then called Calcutta. Both of them write very objectively in first-person narrative, almost establishing a dialogue with his readers. Julio Cortázar calls the place as an infierno, hell in English, as well as an experience inolvidable, unforgettable in English. The author, Julio Cortázar, here transforms into the reader and recommends to visit the Havra station and calls it worth visiting. His work, From the Observatory, that has recently become a subject of interest and research among the Indian Hispanics. It is an original masterpiece that attempts to join the celestial and the urban, the cosmological and the logical, because it is based on Jantar Mantar. It is a picture book that includes photos of the observatory built by Maharaja Jai Singh in 18th century in Jaipur, Rajasthan. There is an interaction of the text with the pictures that creates a prose poem. It has very little text, mostly pictures, photos, to a certain extent infused with the surrealist aesthetics. In fact, this one also sees in Paz with surrealist aesthetics where architecture, astronomy, and photography converge, all come together. Particularly, it's a particular practice, particularly it is practiced, it can be traced, that is a result of intermixing of the Oriental and the Western and the Latin Americans, all three, Eastern, Indian, European, and Latin American cultures in a peculiar geometry of the senses. It is the only cosmogenous book that Cortázar wrote based on the cosmological approaches that appear in various Indian religions. Observatories, we know, are based on the concept of these mandal, where time is measured. Cortázar's engagement with India sometimes appears to be very Borgesian. I have not included Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, who was Cortázar's compatriot from Argentina. But what is Borgesian? It is labyrinthian. So his works, Cortázar's engagement with India seems to be very Borgesian. It is a commitment. It is a commitment of the self, of an outsider who doesn't wish to free himself. He wants to get entrapped into this labyrinth created by the East, by India. Jantar Mantar. What is Jantar Mantar? You must have visited Jantar Mantar. So he wants to get lost, be there forever. However, he also constantly questions its being. He also tries to understand, what is this Jantar Mantar? How is the time measured here? He is trapped in the labyrinth of time as it confronts the other. So this is done by the concept of time, Indian concept of time. Cortázar does it. He reads this Jantar Mantar and writes about it in this work of his, From the Observatory, Prosa del Observatorio, where he takes the concept of Indian concept of time and wants to understand it within its own within its own realm. So, but just these two texts. There's another Brazilian poet, I'll just mention of her, I'll skip through, Cecilia Meirelles, if someone would be interested. You could later read about her. She also visited India in 1953. She was invited by Jawaharlal Nehru. So she also wrote about India, this concept of time, the way Pass analyzed India. She wrote about bazaars of India. So I will skip through in case if someone is interested, you can read about her more. I would again now go to Severo Sardui. Severo Sardui, a Cuban writer, he is another leading figure who analyzed Indian culture by visiting many places such as Agra. He went to Agra, he went to Khajuraho, he went to Ajanta, he went to Ellora, he went to Kulu. He is a major figure in Latin American literary history who based part of his novel Cobra that he published in 1972 in India. Sardui traveled to India in 1971 and later he published Cobra in the following year. And in 1978 also, he spent time in India in places that ranged from Mysore to Kulu in the Himalayas, Varanasi to Kolkata. And this itinerary also is included. It also included the touristic places of Agra, Khajuraho, Ajanta, Ellora, as I said. The photographs he took are testimony to his roving vision, and his diaries are evident to his interest in Mahayana Buddhism. He was very much interested in Buddhism, Borges also, but Sardui, because we are going to focus more on those authors who traveled to India in 20th and 21st century. So he was very much interested by Mahayana Buddhism. Like the early past, the Indian experience for Sardui was also a means to better understand his-self. While Cobra signified the first novel that he published in 1972, after he visited India for the first time in 1971, it signified his arrival in the East, in India. And his next novel, Maitreya, the second novel, it signifies his return as the traveler to India. He also included countries like Sri Lanka, the UAE, Algeria, and finally Florida. So this is this huge itinerary where India is major part of his travel itinerary. A critic called Francois Wall has remarked on how the asphyxiation that Severo Sardui felt, Ghutan, asphyxiation that he felt in the West was cured with overwhelming vitality of India, where no homogeneity was possible. So he felt that West was this culture of West, which was very heterogeneous, which was very homogeneous. He felt suffocated there, and he found an escape, a respite in India. One intends to discuss and delve into the Baroque and Borgesian representation of Banaras in these. There is a text written by Severo Sardui called Benares or Banaras, where he has written about Kashi, Banaras, and also about Sarnath. In one text, he's written about Banaras, the city of Banaras, and also Sarnath, which are just 10 kilometers apart. Usually when one goes to Banaras as a tourist, one visits both the places in one day. क्योंकि 10 किलोमीटर दूर है. So you have to visit, you can visit them in one day. But he talks about that how in one place there exists two spaces, one that represents the Hindu Banaras and the other that represents the Buddhist Banaras or Buddhist philosophy. His engagement with Banaras does not base itself on the binary oppositional structures. So like the way he represents Banaras, the two Banarases in one, two spaces in one place, this is how his engagement is as well. It almost becomes a metaphor for his own inner self and also for his Cuban self as a whole, almost interpreting it in the way as Paz understands the theories of Claude Lévi-Strauss in context of India, the structuralist of binary opposites from an outsider's perspective. He uses surrealist technique to quench the curiosity that the city of Varanasi evokes in him. One can read the translations of Benares or the poem by Severus Sardui on Sarnath called Palabras del Buddha in Sarnath, Words of Buddha in Sarnath. In one place, we see many places. As I said, Banaras, Hindu Banaras and Buddhist Banaras. In Sardui's Banaras, we see various shades. Sardui plays with multiple in singular. He confesses that he uses juxtapositions and paradox to define the multiple and singular, as one often sees it in the city of Banaras. The paradox, the contrast between Sarnath and Varanasi in one text and the two places that exist in the vicinity of each other, however, synonymous to two different religions and ideologies, he brings about the two possible facets of one thought. He says in the text Banaras in 1980 that he published, he says, he explains this text in another text of his called Why the Orient, Por qué el Oriente. He says that in three of his novels, Cobra, Maitreya, and Colibri, he juxtaposes, intermixes, and sometimes completely transforms the otherness that almost becomes synonymous with the Cuban identity of his. He breaks free from dichotomy of man and woman, Occident and the Orient, the East and the West. For him, everything is blurred, this blurry vision. He does it all through Buddhism. How does he? So the middle path, so he takes this, neither extreme, no extremes. Sardui's India is a country with vivid colors and multiple symbols, and also one unique symbol that stands out for the fusion of the opposites in the myth. This sonnet that he wrote on Buddhism, which is also part of the slide, but I don't think there is any need to see this. One can notice it. If you read this Words of Buddha in Sarnath, you would notice this blending, this blurred, this mixing, syncretic representation of India. Paz also looks into this through his poem, very famous poem called Shunyata. Francois Wall, the critique, suggests that Sardui found in Hinduism and above all in Buddhism, the sacred without the religious. This is what he was interested in. He was not interested in Buddhism as a religion. Pablo Neruda completely rejected Buddhism, an influence of Buddhism. He completely rejected. Sardui rejected the religiosity of these religions, but not the spirituality. He was interested in the spirituality of these religions. So he was looking for it. Like Paz, he also incorporates this sacred experience of his in his works. In recent times, these are the major three authors that I wish to focus on. Now I would just mention of other few travelers who are important for us to know what kind of representation, and later I will conclude. So how much time do I have, Dr. Mishra?
In fact, it's almost 4 o'clock, Manashika.
All right. I will just mention of these authors and I will conclude then. So there have been other travelers also who followed the likes of the trajectory of Paz, of Severus Sardui, and they were inclined drawn to India. For example, the performance artist in the beginning, in the introduction, I mentioned of Josefina Baez, New York-based Dominican dance educator. She's an artist. One can find her performance text on YouTube also very easily. It's a performance text, so you can only watch it, called Dominicanish. She would combine yoga and her lived experience in the three spaces of New York, La Romana in the Dominican Republic, and India to produce a zany dance drama like Dominicanish. So she mixed yoga and her lived experience. So she identifies herself as a Black woman who's from Dominican Republic, but who lives in New York. Keeps traveling to India. In fact, she also visits Rishikesh, which is very close to where I live, Dehradun. So she visits, and she produced this zany dance drama that she calls Dominicanish. She uses the classical dance form of Kuchipudi from south of India to restructure her Dominican cultural identity in New York. So she finds solace in yoga and Kuchipudi for her Dominican identity, to understand a Dominican identity in New York, that Black woman Dominican identity in New York. She identifies herself as the other, and she finds solace in Indian yoga and spirituality here. So it is almost like Paz tries to understand his Mexican self while being in India. And then there is this another Argentine journalist called Martin Caparrós. One would like to, I'll not mention much about him, but Martin Caparrós, one can write and one can read about him. There is another Guatemalan writer called Rodrigo Rey Rosa, who wrote El Tren a Travancore, Train to Travancore, Cartas Indias, Indian Letters. He published it in a book called Tres Novelas Exóticas, 3 exotic novels in 2002, where he lived in Theosophical Society of India, and it follows a pattern of picaresque novel, like many picaresque novels that are famous from Spain, Lazarillo de Tormes, El Buscón. In fact, The White Tiger also falls into the same category. He writes in such a way. So it's also very interesting. I would like to talk a little about it, that these essays are picaresque in nature, as asserts the author himself in the preface of the work. So this novel is also, it's not very conventional. It also mixes genres. It also evokes the question of identity. So this is another very important work by one Latin American author. Then there was this Colombian ambassador to India, ambassador of Colombia to India, who lived here till 2013. He published a book called Flor de Loto, Historias desde Asia, which are translated into English as Stories of the Lotus by Indian Hispanist Professor Mini Sahni in 2011. It was published by Sahitya Academy, New Delhi. This book also contains 10 short stories that weave stories around the protagonists. These protagonists are Latin American, and it goes against the ontological identity of the self. In the prologue of this book, written by Enrique Serrano, he says that none of the characters that Juan Pinto describes in his stories returns intact, unblemished. This is what happens with, I think this by what Enrique Serrano says in the preface of Stories of the Lotus. It sums up the way Latin American travelers, intellectuals have represented India in 20th century and in 21st century, that they do not come back intact. They do not come back unblemished. Through this work of fiction and through various other works, one sees that Latin American gaze at India is not just as an Orientalist one, but a gaze that is very objective. However, each author has a very peculiar approach to looking at India. Of course, they have broken free from the prism that Europe had established to look at India. But each and every author, so there is not one Latin American gaze. To conclude, there is not one Latin American gaze. You would see that there are many similarities between Cervero Sarduy and Paz, but Cortázar is different. Juan Alfredo Pinto Saavedra is different. Victoria Ocampo's close contact with Tagore has made her engagement with India very, very unique. So there are many Latin American gazes, we could say. So based on the theories of cosmopolitanism, if one sees, then one can say that we can understand how Paz has made cultures converge in spite of criticism that considers them irreconcilable or binarily opposites. Many of his works are inspired by India, as we had already mentioned. So if we conclude that what would it be? So for example, eventually, just in 2 lines, Pass, Sardui, they all have drawn sketches of comparisons between Cuba, Mexico, and India on various occasions. They have confessed in their interviews on similarities between colors, landscape, symbols, gastronomy. Especially Pass and Sardui, they use paradox and metaphor as the two main instruments for their understanding of India. So in the beginning, I said that research question is that what is this? Why did they feel to engage with India? And also, how do they do it? So they do to break free from the realist depiction first, and then to understand their own self. Then they blend with India. And how do they do it? Especially Pass and Sardui, they use paradox, juxtapositions, and metaphors. They combine, they use two opposite structures and a metaphor to bring them together. Although Cortázar finds himself trapped in the imagery that he presents through two of his works, as we have seen. Juan Alfredo Pinto Saavedra, they open, and Josefina Baez, they open a new space altogether, and they go on this journey of the self-discovery. They, many a time, they come back with this discovery. Sometimes they eventually do not have any conclusion. They do not reach the destination. Julia Kosygin, in the end, I would say that she says in a book, Orientalism in Hispanic Literary Tradition, that, which is also there in the slide, but there is no need for it. I would quote, Hispanic Orientalism seeks to approach the Orient, the other, not in a spirit of confrontation, but rather in what may appear to be a need to preserve one's own identity. It encourages an enhanced original view of the self through a process of leaving the familiar and secure. So you come out of that secured zone in which the other advances an emotional and intellectual detachment that leads to an awareness of the self. The question of the other, unquote, the question of the other in Latin America is used to understand their own identity and define their colonial past. So it is not just to look for the new model, but also to understand their colonial past when they have engaged with India. The imagery of India seems a myth that can be applied in distinguishing their own identity as newly formed nations. However, the ideas on India are many a time prejudiced. So I'm not saying that they do not, they only see the totally completely blend in with India, but they sometimes, there is this story by Roberto Bolaño called Ojo Silva, which was published in 2001, a Chilean author. The story, Roberto Bolaño never traveled to India, but in his story, it is 21st century story, the protagonist travels to India. He blends, there is this mixing of the protagonist experiences he has certain kind of experiences that he mixes, he becomes one with the Indian protagonist. But we would find some kind of prejudices still in this story. And there are other texts also where we would find sometimes prejudices, and sometimes these texts might also seem partisan, prejudiced or partisan. But however, it is still, above all, it is still blending of the cultures, trying to understand oneself in this process. By understanding the other, India, they actually look at innumerable images that they can see of themselves in the various pieces of one mirror. India is this one mirror for them where they can see various images of their own self. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Malashika. It has been a very engaging talk. And we are short of time, but the talk was extremely engaging, and it's nice to understand that not only in the francophonic world and the what you were saying in the Hispanic world, particularly Latin American world, we find some similarity. So in fact, when they're talking about India, they're actually trying to see themselves, their own identity, trying to, understand themselves better, because they are more close to, the audience are very close that way. So they find themselves, and how different they are from the European self, and the Latin American self finds solace in more, I think, when they talk about the Oriental country and some kind of identity, although often it clashes, but somehow they feel at home. That is very interesting. Even in the Francophone world, Francophone studies, Latin American studies, we find close similarities because both had experienced colonialism, difference, and tried to see each other in that, cosmopolitan gaze. Thank you, Dr. Malashika. It has been very, very engaging, and I'm sure many, new work, research can be done in this field.
Ma'am,
So
just
it's
one
often coming, yeah, Dr. Mishra,
just one
please.
question from my side. Actually, I've also sometime my connection was unstable, but I have studied like certain things like death has been also been dealt, and they have inspired much by Indian all these religious texts. Moreover, Gabriela Mistral from
Yeah, yes.
Chile, she is also presented India to Chilean audience. This
Gabriela
uh,
Mistral did that too, right?
she had done a voluminous work. Also, there are so many poems. They have written so many poems.
It's true.
Recently, Chato sir has translated a book, the Borges. There also, when I was writing book review, there was also
Your
certain,
voice is not audible.
or I don't know, maybe my internet connection is unstable. So I think, are you getting me, ma'am?
Yeah, yeah, now it's clear.
Now I think
Uh-huh.
it's better.
So India is present. Our culture is very close. No, India is also present in Latin America and
Yeah, that is the other side of the coin.
yes,
How Indians,
exactly.
writers presented Latin America. Maybe we can have it for our
Mm.
next lecture right
Yes,
now.
yes, ma'am.
So I think it's time that we close. A lot of thanks to our speaker,
Mm,
to all the to all the participants